You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I am Michael Halcomb, and this is an episode of Three Things. And in these episodes, I share with you just three things that I'm thinking about. So today, what I want to share with you about, what's on my mind, is writing. I find myself most weeks doing a lot of different writing and a lot of different genres, which requires me to sort of shift my style of writing, which is kind of interesting. I can go email, right, which is can range from informal to semi-formal to very formal. You can go to social media posts, which tend to be very informal. And then there are other things like sermons, which is more formal. Although you want to strike a good balance between that formal and informal. And then writing things like essays or conference papers, which tend to be much more formal. And there's another area that I've ventured into lately, which is joke writing. In fact, my sort of New Year's resolution that I've set for myself is to do at least one open mic for stand-up comedy in 2024. So hopefully I'll be able to achieve that. But I'm working on writing jokes as well. So here's what I'm thinking about these three things. Writing academic conference papers or essays, writing sermons, and then writing jokes. And so this may not be an incredibly insightful podcast episode. Maybe it is, but just in the last like 24 to 48 hours, I've found myself writing in all three of these genres: sermons, conference papers, and then just jokes. So I thought I'd maybe just read a little bit from like each genre of what I've written and sort of just reflect on that. I'm just doing this sort of off the cuff. This is what I was thinking about when I hit the record button. And so, yeah, I'm sort of just sharing in real time. So let's just start with the sermon. This is a sermon I preached a couple weeks ago, titled Some Lies We Believe. It's based on Mark 10, 1-12. And I'll just read maybe the first couple of paragraphs, and you'll kind of get a feel for the style, at least the way that I open it. My sermons do tend to be very meaty, and but I like to open with something that's a little bit lighter and creates a nice runway up to the meaty stuff. So here's how I started this sermon a couple weeks ago, and I want you to pay attention because I guess what I'm paying attention to is writing style and maybe like voice. Okay, the voice with which I'm writing. So, here's how the sermon starts. It's a new year, and I don't know if any of you have made New Year's resolutions, but a lot of people do. And as is usually the case, most people who made them will give up on them within the first couple of months or weeks. I think a lot of people start out a new year with a glimmer of hope. They hope to set high standards for themselves. They hope to set some goal and reach it. They hope to have a sense of accomplishment. But here's the reality. Many people are just kidding themselves, aren't they? Or to be even a little more blunt about it, many people are just lying to themselves. Here's what I mean. Many people will set dieting and exercising goals, and they'll do so not just ambitiously, but over-ambitiously. And there quickly comes a point when that in and of itself becomes self-deception. People lie to themselves when they fail to create realistic plans or consider the necessary steps to achieve them. Or here's another way people lie to themselves: procrastination. People try to convince themselves that they'll start working on their resolutions tomorrow or at some vague later date in the future. They procrastinate and repeatedly postpone taking any meaningful steps toward their goals. Here's another example. No accountability. or a lack of it. Many people make resolutions without a support system or a clear plan for accountability. They might tell themselves that they can rely solely on their willpower to achieve their goals without seeking external support or guidance, when deep down they know that's not the case. It'll never happen. So, in some real sense, it's become a kind of cultural tradition for people to lie to themselves at the start of the new year. The irony is, most people want the new year to be better than the last. To start by putting their best foot forward. But they actually start with a lie. And as we dive into today's focal passage, Mark 10, 1-12, I think there are a couple of other lies that will come to the surface. But here's the deal. It's not until we uncover the lies and call them for what they are that we can really, truly, and actually deal with them and do something about it. So today we're going to dig into Mark's Gospel, which we've been studying for over a year and a half. And along the way, we're going to draw attention to some lies we believe. So let's turn to our focal passage and begin reading. It starts like this. All right, so that's the sermon, and you kind of get a feel for how it opens, the sort of style, the voice, the pacing, and that sort of thing. I would actually say that in person, it even has a little bit more of a different feel, like when I'm up in front of the congregation preaching. It's probably a little more, seems a little more laid back, comes off maybe as a little more laid back, but I don't know. So there's that. Now, maybe let's contrast it. Here's how I open I'll give you the first 2 or 3 paragraphs of this new article, or this conference paper rather, that I'm working on. I don't have a set title for this, but the idea here is the working title is something like Defining Love, Quantifying Abstractions. So already, like that, when you compare that to some lies we believe, you kind of get a different feel already. Defining love, quantifying abstractions. Or maybe it'll be something like defining and quantifying love, something like that. But here's how this essay opens up. Excuse me. It's been nearly a decade since Pew Research Center published its 2015 report titled Most Millennials Resist the Millennial Label. 3 years after that, author David Seal, in his book The New Copernicans, wrote, "While most people hate being labeled, millennials are particularly sensitive to this, as they consistently feel like they've been mislabeled." Fast forward to 2021, where sites like adage.com publish articles with titles such as Gen Z, the label-less generation, and the future of data. The article contends that Gen Zers, quote, eschew labels, preferring instead to move fluidly, end quote. Similarly, Megan Evershed, a journalist researching music, makes the claim that even musical genres are resisted by Gen Zers because they're too limiting. She writes, quote, Gen Z aren't interested in labels. The idea that gender and sexuality are fluid, if not accepted by all, has firmly entered public discourse. But just as we move away from traditional boundaries of gender, Gen Z are also tearing down musical boundaries, instead embracing sounds that are fluid and difficult to categorize. End quote. The pushback on definitions, or at the very least fixed definitions, by some millennials and Gen Zers is in large part what prompted the present essay. I have in recent years paid increasing attention to the societal resistance toward definitions. A handful of questions that often accompany such views are: who gets to define terms? Why? On what authority? Why must I or anyone else accept these definitions? Why can't I define things as I prefer? And so on. Even when we look to dictionaries, it's patently not the case that their definitions are the be-all, end-all, or that their entries are forever codified and never to be updated. As Stephen Mauritson notes, quote, the implicit claim made when a given definition is included in a dictionary is not that a particular meaning is correct or even common, but that its use in a given context is verifiable, end quote. Of course, in order for a society to function, its inhabitants must successfully communicate. And to successfully communicate, there must be a baseline understanding of shared meanings or definitions between those communicating. As communication researchers Richard West and Lynn Turner contend, Quote, meaning is central to our definition of interpersonal communication because meaning is what people extract from a message, end quote. They continue, quote, when we say that people work toward creating and sustaining meaning, we're suggesting that there must be some shared meaning for interpersonal communication to take place, end quote. Because this is the case, there is then a certain illogic that undergirds and even flows from resisting definitions. There's simply no way to successfully operate in a society apart from definitions, regardless of how fixed they are or not. And as such, to act as though one can meaningfully communicate apart from labels, descriptors, or definitions is little more than a facade. I'll stop there, but you kind of get a feel. I mean, that sounds much more elevated, much more formal, much more stiff in a way. Although I won't deliver it in a stiff manner, but it's interesting to me to just compare that sort of style of my own writing with my own sermon writing. And then in comes joke writing, which is a completely different ball game altogether. Jokes are typically short. I mean, I'm trying to learn how to write setups and punchlines and all this sort of thing. And so I'll just, where I get to be long-winded, maybe as a preacher or as an academic, jokes kind of like don't let you do that so much. If you want to be funny and maximize the hilarity, I mean, you can tell stories and you can tell long stories, but the stories have to be structured where it's joke after joke after joke after joke, kind of. And so there's all kinds of structuring that goes into just writing different types of jokes. For example, I'll share a joke here with you that I wrote just a few days ago. And it's based on a true story, although this is what we would call a reversal format, and you can get an idea of what it might take to switch from sermon style, like mildly formal but mildly informal, to the conference style, which is very formal, to a joke writing style, which is very informal and very laid back. So this kind of hits like a whole continuum or spectrum. But here you go. This a reversal joke. A few years ago, I was held up at gunpoint by a soldier in Ethiopia. He took everything I had, and he walked it over to a sheet metal shack where he and others went through it. And he came back angry, and he told me I had to give him money in order to get my belongings back. So I started panicking. And then a few seconds later, he started laughing out loud, and he revealed that I was on a hidden camera show. Of course, they were using my camera, but still. Of course, I can't hear if you're laughing about that, but that gives you an idea. I mean, it's a completely different voice, different persona, different writing style. Here's another just silly joke, again rooted in some truth. My grandma was an avid smoker her entire life, but in her old age, she didn't let the breathing machine stop her from enjoying time with her grandkids. She planned the best family game nights with games like Monopoly and checkers and hide and go smoke. Other favorites were Pin the Tail on the Oxygen Tank and Simon Says Inhale. So you can see this is the first part of the joke that we call a triple or a rule of threes. There's a structure here, but there's it also includes a sort of reversal, and then you have a tag on the end. It's just a completely different like shift in gears with regard to writing. And so I'm a novice at this, and I'm trying to figure out how to tell my own stories and make them funny. So here's another one I wrote. I know a lot of people were raised going to church. I wasn't, not at all. But I do go to church now. I'm a pastor. I'm a Christian, and there's this whole cultural stigma that Christians are just hypocrites. But I'll tell you this: I'm no hypocrite. At least not on Sunday. Right. So there's another joke. Here's one more. I just get so tired of it, these hypocrite accusations. Like hypocrite, like I would never gossip about a woman. I just wouldn't do something like that. Even if she spread awful, terrible rumors about me, or is named Sandy and had an affair last week, which is why she missed church. I'm just not that kind of guy. Right? So you can see the reverse there. It's unexpected. And yeah, I can't obviously hear if you're laughing, but this is very challenging to me to go from writing the first two types of genres to this genre, still trying to be original and be authentic and be myself and that sort of thing and tell some of my stories. But it is fun and it makes my like brain fire in a different way when I'm sitting down and trying to craft jokes like this. So I don't know. These are three things that I'm thinking about. I don't know if it's meaningful for you or carries any significance for you, but yeah, challenge yourself to write in different genres, or at the very least, as you go throughout your day, just pay attention to the different genres of writing that you encounter. It's kind of fascinating. The world of writing is really, really fascinating to me. And so, all right, I'm going to stop there. 3 thoughts on writing. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.